Shut the fuck up. Ever played that on repeat? From yourself to yourself? When you just didn't need to say what you said? It happens enough, doesn't it? Your mouth keeps spending authority you haven't earned and mortgaging power you already own. Machiavelli's warning exposes the cost with merciless clarity. The cost is quiet at first, and then it is your schedule, your posture, your control. If you want to see that cost without anesthesia, you take Machiavelli's lens and hold it to your day. He doesn't ask you to become cruel. He asks you to become effective. He tells you to stop worshiping how people ought to behave and start working with the truth of how they actually move when risk shows up. You will not be judged by the beauty of your sentences. You will be measured by what your words cause to happen. The strategist who controls speech controls pace. The person who controls pace controls outcomes. When you speak to buy time, you sell your time cheap. When you learn to be silent until the sentence buys something real, you become the presence people treat as gravity. This is not about being liked. It is about control, power, immunity, and the steady aura that turns the loudest room into background hum. In that frame, you begin with a single operating line. You speak to move decisions. You stay silent to move gravity. You can feel the trap because you were trained to step into it. Someone asks for comfort, and you give them confessions. You start explaining your motives as if motive could carry freight. The average person performs sincerity as if it were a contract. The strategic person delivers outcomes and lets the outcome explain everything. Appearances matter because most people cannot see your heart, but appearances are not reality. They are instruments. Use them like instruments. Look at how you answer under pressure. You narrate, you apologize, you promise more talk later, and you wonder why the room takes you less seriously after every paragraph. You donated leverage to anyone willing to look offended. The right move is to hold posture and answer with results. The psychology is blunt. Anxiety withers when confronted with delivery, and agendas tend to rearrange themselves around whoever controls the schedule that actually ships. You don't need to argue your goodness if you can point to a ledger. You don't need to flood anyone with feeling if you can point to a system that ran on time without you begging for applause. You reduce your language until the only parts left are the parts that move the decision forward. Everything else is theater, and the audience you should care about, the ones who pay, who hire, who decide, rate theater by tickets sold, not by sincerity displayed. Your ordinary betrayals of power look harmless, even virtuous, because they are wrapped in habits you were told were admirable. The first one happens when a room asks for warmth, and you hand them your spine. You tell your story as if a story could absolve an error. You overcorrect with explanation because you equate confession with repair. Machiavelli would tell you this is a performance built for collapse. He would not tell you to be dishonest. He would tell you to privilege what works. He would ask you to appear trustworthy while you remain free to act as events demand, to anchor reputation in what you can enforce rather than what you can articulate. The moment you try to be liked with words, you put your leverage on a public auction block and sell to the highest frown. The cure is smaller than you think. You let an outcome be your explanation. Send the report, ship the fix, issue the refund, close the loop with a timestamp, not a monologue. When someone asks why you did it, you let the calendar and the ledger answer on your behalf. That is not arrogance. That is adulthood. The old fake choice is the next betrayal you walk into. Be loved now or be feared later. The crowd offers it like a moral fork. If you choose love, you narrate endlessly in hopes that narration will keep everybody happy. If you choose seriousness, you set terms that don't wobble, and you accept that some people will call you cold. Machiavelli is explicit. The ideal is both affection and deterrence, but when you must choose, it is safer to be feared than loved, provided you avoid hatred. Translate that into your day, and you hear a very different instruction than the caricature. Fear is not terror. Fear is the quiet expectation that when you set a date, the date is real, and when you draw a line, the line is live. You do not bark, you bill. You do not plead, you enforce. You do not flaunt status, you meet deadlines. You do not cross the boundaries that breed loathing, other people's property, their dignity, their families. If the choice is between a sweet paragraph and a clear consequence, you choose the consequence because consequences teach. Love without consequence evaporates under pressure. Consequence remains when the room turns hot. The mouth betrays you the second it begins to beg for affection instead of calmly anchoring gravity. Speak less and uphold more. The room will stop treating you like a suggestion. Negotiation is where the price of chatter becomes obvious. Silence would make you money, and chatter burns it like tinder. You rush to fill the gap because gaps feel risky. You recite backstory to sound cooperative. You pre-discount to look generous. You narrate your constraints as if vulnerability were persuasive to a counterparty whose job is to take as much as you will give. The other side hears fatigue disguised as friendliness and leads you down the price ladder. Machiavelli hands you two animals as a corrective and clips your tongue until you can wear both: the fox who detects the trap and the lion who refuses to be herded. Your talk betrays both animals. The fox disappears when you narrate feelings instead of reading incentives. The lion vanishes when you cushion firm terms with soft disclaimers. The strategic move is to set the edge of the deal once, in calm language, and then go still long enough to learn where their real pressure lives. If they need speed, you trade speed for price. If they need certainty, you trade certainty for terms. If they need your brand, you trade access for ownership. You either trade or you leave. Every extra sentence either locks you into a corner or teaches the other side that your boundaries are stage props. The quiet teaches more than any speech, that you cannot be rushed, that you know your value, that you don't chase. You don't announce this. You let their counteroffers reveal it to themselves. Generosity with a microphone looks noble and behaves like a boomerang. You announce that you will cover the bill in front of a crowd. You overtip with trembling hands. You absorb costs no one asked you to swallow. You go public with promises you've not priced. Then you resent the world when the check returns with interest. Machiavelli's counsel here is vicious to vanity and kind to treasuries. Apparent liberality drains capacity and breeds backlash because once you must refill the coffers, you either squeeze people or default on promises, and both roads earn hatred. The adult move is disciplined parsimony that protects delivery. You can be generous quietly after your numbers support it, and you can be generous in systems, policies, thresholds, scholarships set to survive weather, rather than in spectacles. Your mouth betrays your future the moment it purchases image with money you will need for substance. Be seen as tight if you must. Being labeled rapacious when you retrench will cost you your base. Refuse to speechify generosity. Fund promises you can keep. There is a paradox worth memorizing. The quieter the gift, the longer it lasts. Borrowed clout is a costume that comes apart under rain. You make a habit of name-dropping your backers, your platform, your exclusive partner, your algorithmic boost, as if their strength were yours by osmosis. Machiavelli's chapters on mercenaries and auxiliaries are not medieval trivia. They are a user manual for modern dependence. If your power belongs to someone else, an algorithm, a patron, a single contract, you can speak confidently today and whisper tomorrow when terms change. Your mouth brands your identity to forces that can withdraw, and those forces will not consider your identity when they do. The strategist talks modestly about alliances and loudly about capability owned. Build direct channels, build buffers, build portable skills, make distribution that is yours. Yes, use help. You are not a hermit, but do not confuse assistance with home. The prince who relies on hired swords either dies when they fail or becomes a puppet when they succeed. The operator who lives on rented distribution or one client's mood faces the same math. Say less about who stands behind you and more about what will ship, whether or not they do. A quiet record out-argues a loud affiliation. Sometimes the weather turns and your instinct is to out-talk rain. Fate does not answer speeches. There are seasons when water rises and words won't hold the flood. Machiavelli's image is perfect. Fortune is a river that overruns its banks and tears down everything in its path. Wise people raise embankments when the sky is clear so the next surge does less harm. Translate that into crisis. Your job is to reduce the surface area of luck before the storm and to shorten the window of confusion during the storm. Answer crisis with a system, not a sermon. The heavy move is simple. Acknowledge the surge in one sentence, announce the next checkpoint on a clock, publish the repair plan with owners, and return to work. Your sentence is short because the action is long. Reality respects those who respect it. The crowd may prefer soothing words, the river doesn't. Build the banks and let silence do the calming. You will notice something counterintuitive. People who wanted your apology will settle for your schedule when they learn your schedule is real. The ugliest risks don't come from enemies. They come from the coalitions you accidentally build through contempt and hatred. Machiavelli writes like a surgeon here. A ruler protects himself by avoiding what makes people despise or hate him. This is not image coaching. This is risk triage. Hatred forms coalitions. Contempt invites plots. In ordinary life, hatred is the group chat you can't see, the trade association that never returns your calls, the quiet no that freezes opportunity. Contempt is the shrug that turns your name into a punchline. Your mouth makes both when you perform superiority or wobble publicly and then try to explain. The move is narrower and colder than you want. Remove the triggers that create hatred. Don't touch what people call theirs. Remove the gestures that create contempt. Don't wobble. Don't boast. Don't promise what you can't deliver. Speak once about policy, not personality. Then be predictably exact. People can dislike your decisions and still respect your control. They cannot forgive humiliation. If you must disappoint, do it once and cleanly. If you must correct, do it in writing and quickly. The aim is deterrence without humiliation, because deterrence buys peace and humiliation buys conspiracies. When stakes rise, many people perform virtue because performance buys claps. Machiavelli breaks this spell with a line that should be engraved above every keyboard. Pursue the effectual truth, not imagined ideals. The effectual truth is that the world pays in outcomes, not adjectives. The more you bend your words to reality, the less reality can ambush you. You will be tempted to hide inside slogans because slogans feel safe. Don't. Say the constraint aloud, name the trade-off, spell the deliverable in numbers. It sounds less noble. It makes you untouchable when fantasy collapses because you never sold the fantasy. You do not need to shout values if your systems make those values predictable. The tone you are after is not apologetic or pleading. It is composed and exact. You are not seeking applause. You are building immunity. Accusations often arrive dressed as questions. Why are you so quiet? What are you hiding? If you cared, you would respond right now. Real leaders talk more. If you over-answer, you validate a crooked frame that ties your honor to instant access. Machiavelli's reputation on keeping faith is often caricatured, but the practical point beneath the caricature is hard steel. Match promises to conditions, and when the conditions that justified the promise evaporate, renegotiate the situation, not your dignity. You do not need a novel to defend yourself. You need a mirror. You answer the premise, not the bait. If you were sure, you wouldn't need me to hurry. We will speak when the evidence arrives. The timeline follows the task. Each line ends a theater and returns the crowd to facts. The psychology is ruthless and clean. The accuser who needed your panic for fuel must either bring receipts or shrink. You did not destroy them, you let their script starve. You can go further, and sometimes you should. You can turn the accusation into a certificate. Thank you for confirming that we set the terms, not the clock. You can redirect the energy back to the audience. We don't trade in speed, we trade in results. You can close a confrontation with a sentence that leaves no handle for more tugging. That is incorrect. We will correct the record in writing at 5. Then you go back to work. Some phrases behave like doors. You use them once and let the room discover that the door is real. The most expensive habit is the most ordinary one. You talk when silence is doing the work already. You fill interviews with autobiography instead of results. You flood investor meetings with adjectives instead of unit economics. You turn family dinners into tribunals on your goodness. You grant online strangers jurisdiction over your nervous system by answering as if they were judges. Every extra sentence increases the number of handles the world can grab. The fox and the lion return with their sly smirk. The fox sees how silence makes incentives visible. The lion understands that stillness is a warning in its own right. The sophisticated move isn't mute stubbornness, it's composed economy. In a hiring panel, you give one example anchored to a number and stop. In a pitch, you show the path to profit and stop. In a smear, you post a single correction and a concrete next step and stop. Silence is not avoidance. Silence is aim. It makes the unserious wither and the serious step forward. The test is simple. Did the sentence move a decision? If not, you gave the world another handle. Training your speech to serve power is less mystical than it sounds. It is the slow practice of linking words to actions so tightly that the words inherit the credibility of the actions. You anchor your talk to decisions. If a sentence does not advance a choice, it probably advances somebody else's show. You move your promises out of your throat and into your cadence. Update rhythms, shipping schedules, standing commitments that exist whether or not you feel verbose today. You tie your reputation to predictable enforcement rather than reactive emotion, so the colleague who misses a deadline gets the same calm consequence as the stranger who misses an invoice. No public scolding, no dramatic thread, just the next step you already posted. You refuse to speak as if luck were a policy. You build the banks while the sun is up, and when the water rises, you do not sell hope. You deliver repairs on a clock. You protect your aura by avoiding theatrics that breed hatred and gestures that invite contempt. You model seriousness in a way that intimidates noise without humiliating people. The rule is ancient and undefeated. Deterrence without humiliation buys peace. It helps to walk through concrete rooms. You are in a compensation negotiation. The recruiter asks you to walk through your journey because stories are cheaper than numbers. You deliver one line about scope, one line about impact, one line about measurable results, and one line about the decision that must be made, then you stop. You do not itemize your childhood. You do not perform need. You do not justify your rent. You wait. The silence does two pieces of work you cannot do with more talk. It shows you will not be flattered into concessions, and it pressures the other side to reveal where their real ceiling lives. Or you are a founder pitching a fund that likes to hear itself think. You show path to profit, timing, risks you have already shrunk, and the lever you control. You present your ask and the exact use of proceeds. Then you stop and let the room hunt for holes. Their questions reveal what they actually value. You adjust only where the adjustment buys terms you plan to trade anyway. Or you are at dinner with someone who believes your calm is arrogance. You smile once. You refuse to defend tone. You ask what decision needs a date. Most criticism dies when the critic must propose a calendar. Online is a carnival where attention sells for pennies and dignity sells for free. You must protect your nervous system like an asset. When bait arrives, respond now if you care. Why are you hiding? Say something if you have nothing to hide. Remember the frame they are selling. That panic equals virtue. Decline the frame. You can answer with a mirror. If you had proof, you wouldn't need me to talk faster. You can answer with the schedule. We'll post the facts at noon. You can answer with an action. We're resolving the bug. Update at 5. Each line denies the demand for your adrenaline and offers the only thing that should carry your name. A verifiable next step. Silence fills the gaps between the steps. Your absence becomes a posture. People who need your reaction to live will find it somewhere else. People who need your results will wait because your clock is real. Authority accumulates in the small, visible ways. You reply on your schedule, and your schedule is simple. You publish every Thursday, not when you feel inspired. You build the day the work lands. You announce the decision date before the meeting begins, not after the debate drifts. You use the same words for the same policies every time. You do not inflate. You do not deflate. You do not suddenly find exceptions in the presence of volume. You show that your gravity does not change under noise. This creates an aura that is hard to acquire and easy to squander. It is the aura of immunity. People learn that making you louder does not move you faster, that making you feel does not move you off the plan, that trying to corner you with emergencies only exposes who failed to plan earlier. You will be misread as cold. Accept the misread. Warmth without structure is confetti. Structure that delivers on time is the clearest kindness you can offer to adults. Reputation is not a fragile porcelain that must be admired constantly. Reputation is a weight that must be carried by the same hand every day. There is a difference between a good reputation, soft, agreeable, generous to a fault, and a strong reputation, respected, slightly intimidating, difficult to move casually. The good reputation asks the room to please be nice. The strong reputation requires the room to measure itself against your terms before it wastes your time. You cultivate the second by being boring and exact. Your promises are short. Your verifications are frequent. Your corrective actions are quiet. You are not aiming to be loved first. You are aiming to be believed. Love follows belief or not at all. The people who want you to be pliable will call the strong reputation difficult. Let them. The same people call gravity difficult when they fall. You will meet testers of all kinds. There is the colleague who performs urgency so that you donate your weekend. There is the client who asks for one more call to make sure we're aligned, which is code for getting free work while pretending to do diligence. There is the critic who suggests that if you had nothing to hide, you would speak at length. Each of them has a script that depends on your mouth. You do not need to condemn them. You need to decline the part they wrote for you. The sentence is often enough. I don't work without a scope. I don't bill after delivery. We publish the update at 5. I'll be back then. That is not rudeness, that is control. The effect on psychology is consistent. People who were planning to use your talk to move your boundary find themselves having to move within yours. Many will adjust. Some will leave. Both outcomes are data. Stillness is a language, and most people never learn to speak it. The room interprets stillness as patience when you back it with delivery, as arrogance when you back it with nothing, and as fear when you back it with wobble. Your job is to choose the first interpretation by practicing the loop. Set the term, post the checkpoint, deliver on the checkpoint, go quiet until the next checkpoint. Over time, your stillness becomes a signal. It says without saying that your words are expensive and therefore trustworthy. It says that accusing you is a cost, not a game. It says that you are not an actor in their emotion, but an operator bound to a plan. You will tire of repeating the schedule. That is fine. Repeat it anyway. The ground is not bored by being solid. You will also face accusations and jabs that try to paint your silence as guilt. There, you use the techniques that go beyond mere quiet. You turn the accusation back on the accuser by letting it reveal their insecurity. If you were certain, you would not need me to hurry. You reframe the narrative by redirecting energy to the crowd and the clock. We don't do trials by reaction, we do trials by evidence at noon. You deploy short, sharp, truthful phrases that end a confrontation without offering a defense. That is wrong. We'll fix it on record at 5. You don't shout, you don't preach. You make the door visible, and then you walk through it on schedule. These moves have a particular psychological effect. They force the aggressor to either escalate into obvious hostility, which costs them allies, or to retreat into silence, which costs them face. You didn't out-argue them, you removed the oxygen their performance required. Consider another set of rooms. You are managing a team after a miss. Many leaders try to manage with speeches. They hold a meeting about values. They perform contrition. Nothing changes because the schedule did not change. The adult move is specific and quiet. Reset the scope, shorten the cycle, assign clear owners, post the next public checkpoint, remove one distraction that everyone knows is draining focus. Then you return to work. You do not humiliate anyone. You do not whip anyone. You avoid the gestures that breed contempt, grandstanding, sarcasm, visible wobble. You do not trigger hatred by touching what people call theirs. Credit unfairly taken, dignity publicly dinged, calendars blown up without notice. You model steady gravity and let the new cadence reform the team's story about itself. A week later, your speech about values isn't necessary. The calendar delivered the sermon for you, or you are the person under fire. The internet has found you. They demand performance. They say that if you cared, you would talk now. You do not try to win with paragraphs. You choose one sentence and one schedule. We're correcting the record at noon with documents. You do the work to make sure that noon comes with facts, not feelings. You post once. You do not answer follow-ups that are only bait. You do not apologize for what you did not do. You do not attempt to please people who showed up for a show. You will be called evasive. You will also be able to work tomorrow. The strategy is not about pride. It is about survival. If you accept the premise that urgency equals virtue, you give your enemies your nervous system for free. Decline the premise, and they must either bring evidence or wait like adults. Many cannot do either. The through line is that you are always teaching the room how to treat you. You teach with your schedule and your silence far more than with your justifications. If you permit late without consequence, you teach that your dates are suggestions. If you answer accusations with essays, you teach that anyone can summon you with an insinuation. If you flood people with confessions when they want comfort, you teach them to confuse vulnerability with accountability. This is why the standard you adopt must be brutal only to illusions. Judge words by their results. When you accept that standard, your sentences get shorter, your silences get heavier, and your reputation gets stronger. You become someone whose presence changes the physics of the room. People speak more carefully around you because they know that words here have to buy something real. There is a doorway line that you can carry from screen to boardroom to dinner table, and you can carry it without flinching because it is not bravado. It is operating code. Remember this: you speak to move decisions. You stay silent to move gravity. That sentence saves you from your ordinary betrayals. It stops you from adding heat to fires that wanted your oxygen. It stops you from renting your nervous system to every ping. It stops you from performing virtue when the room needed competence. It builds the only reputation that matters in Machiavelli's world and in yours, a reputation for results that survive weather. You can test the line today on something small. When the email arrives asking for a hop on a call to pick your brain, answer with a scope and a schedule. When the friend forwards rumors about your name, answer with the time your statement will post. When the team asks for speeches after a miss, answer with a narrowed scope and the next date on the calendar. You will feel colder than you want to feel. That feeling is not cruelty. That feeling is adulthood replacing theater. None of this requires you to become harsh. It requires you to become steady. It requires you to tolerate being misread by people who translate your calm into arrogance. It requires you to let your receipts talk while your mouth rests. It requires you to let immature critics discover that your absence is not a wound to your ego but a guard for your mission. It requires you to refuse the fantasy that perfect wording rescues weak leverage. And it requires you to remember what Machiavelli prescribes for leaders who hope to last. Avoid what breeds hatred, avoid what invites contempt, and let seriousness set your pace. This is prevention, not theater, longevity, not posturing, immunity, not mere strength that still reacts. Now return to the river. The water will rise again. It always does. You can spend your energy writing a poem about fairness, or you can build the bank while the sun is up. You can waste an hour practicing your speech about how you care, or you can finish the fix and post the update with a timestamp that proves that you care in the only language that matters in the adult world, delivery. The fox listens before he moves, and the lion moves without asking permission. You will be tempted to explain that you are both. Don't. Be both and let outcomes explain what you are. You will be tempted to argue that affection is better than deterrence. Don't. Avoid hatred and contempt and let seriousness accumulate until affection becomes a side effect of reliability. You will be tempted to defend your intent to people who earn a living by creating outrage. Don't. Present the record on your clock and leave. If they could destroy you with facts, they would. If they can only destroy you with noise, your stillness makes them look like someone swinging at smoke. When you feel the old urge to narrate your worth, remember that most traps need your tongue to tighten. Keep it. Let the room run its script until reality taps out pretense. Then speak once, clear, short, enforceable, and return to the work that proves you meant it. The paradox holds. When you spend fewer words, you spend less power. So the power remains to do the thing your words were trying to do. That is the standard Machiavelli would apply to your sentences, and the standard you should apply to yourself. It is a brutal law only to illusions. It is mercy to your future. It is how you build a presence that people call untouchable, even while you do nothing flashy except honor your own clock. That is the quiet victory. That is the only victory that lasts. Remember the rule you now carry. Speak only to move the decision, stay silent to move gravity, enforce without drama, and let your cadence write your character. That is how power compounds quietly, how control hardens, and how your presence becomes untouchable under pressure and noise.